Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mind, Body, and Soul television show coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. We are live on YouTube Live as well as Hangouts and at consciousevolutionmedia.com. I'm your host, Coach Steve Toad, and we have a fantastic show for all of you this evening. We are joined by a fantastic guest. Her name is Amanda Hart, and she's joining us from the UK, and she's an intuitive consultant as well as a metaphysical healing practitioner. Welcome to the show, Amanda. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Steve. How are you?
Really good, thank you very much. And I just want to acknowledge Amanda that she's doing this in the middle of the night in the UK. That's like outrageous.
Yeah, and I've been up since 8 this morning as well, so with clients. So it's a long day.
Yeah, there you go. So we have a fantastic theme, and the theme for this evening is how to fear less and love more. I love the theme, but before we jump into it and find out more about what that means, I'd like to make a request, and the request is to Amanda. If I take away those titles, intuitive consultant and metaphysical healing practitioner, and any other titles that anyone has ever called you, if I take them all away, what's left? Who is really Amanda Hart?
Inspiration. I inspire people, that's what I do, to help people to transmute dark to light. Simple as that.
Awesome. All right. And she's, she's very intuitive, and she's into the metaphysical energies, and we'll see, because people with strong energies have effect on technology. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed.
Oh, yeah. Let's not go there.
Okay. So let's get related to, have you get related to our viewers a little bit. Just tell us the short version of what you've been up to in your life, and how did you get to where we are here today?
Well, the short version is I've had to write a book about it, because that's the long version. But I went through a lot of experiences as a child on a negative level, which led to producing programs that were not conducive with my health and well-being, which led me to have difficult relationships. And thus I started to look for reasons. And once I started to find those reasons, I started to find solutions. And the only place I could find the solutions was the energy world. So that was my story that started in about the early 90s, and so it progressed. But I'm a very skeptical Capricorn, so I needed it in real hard facts, and I needed to see it in blood and stone. So it took me a while to really get to grips with this stuff, but eventually I realized actually this was part of my journey.
Well, isn't it your experience, Amanda? It has been mine, that we are attracted to the people. So let me preface that. So when we are not awake and not conscious, and we can talk about that in a minute, just to clarify that to the viewers, but when we are not awake and not conscious, we tend to, at least I did, attracted the people to myself, the ones that I shouldn't really be in a relationship with.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's really how and then I have to say that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't probably be where I am today. I mean, that's been my journey. Like what you said, this has been your journey. This is how I got to where I am today. And I wouldn't want to do it any differently.
No. And I think that's how we can relate to this so well, because for me, I had to find out what I didn't like to find the polar opposite, so that I could search for what I did like. And I think that's what life does. It rebounds you, so that if you don't like the experience, then you've got to find out why and search for what is the opposite. And that's what you find in nature. So if you look at nature, it's very easy. It's very complex, but it's also very simple in its makeup. So you'll always, if you get a forest fire, then it burns down those beautiful trees, but it leaves rich mineral soil for new life. And that's what we find in the human kingdom as well. When we start searching for that love, which is the opposite to fear, that's when we really start to open up, and we align to our paths.
Fantastic. So what is everybody? I mean, everybody's running around being so afraid of so many things. What's up with that?
Well,
Did
I
you
mean,
invite, by the way, the guys from upstairs? Because I keep hearing this noise once in a while.
yeah,
Are
sorry, I
they
had to
here
bring
with
them with
us?
me. They insisted. Yeah, I mean, what's wrong with it? What's right with it? But the thing is, I think that's the thing. I started to realise that the more I discovered that the world was a fearful place, the more fearful everything became. And I think when you start to embrace the fear and you embrace the darker stuff in life, that's when it doesn't touch you; it just passes through you. So you experience it, but you know what to do with it, and that's the difference.
That's
So it's
awesome.
just it's just a case of, yeah, I mean, but it took a long time. I must, it's not, sometimes we go through some very severe situations. And some of these traumas, you sort of get caught up in the drama for a while
Mm-hmm.
until eventually you realize, actually, you know what, I don't need this to hurt me so much. And that's when we really start to learn about the power within us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that I know that you went through some childhood abuse, but I'm curious. Do you think that every human being is going through that in some way?
Well, it depends what you call abuse. I mean, we can, in the UK here at the moment, we're going through law changes, which is recognising what coercive control is, which is the subtle, sort of chipping away of your spirit by somebody who is a supposed loved one, which has never been recognised as abuse before, but now is. So, I think really we need to be educating ourselves more upon what is right for us and what is wrong for us, and how we treat each other as human beings. And that's when we start to really differentiate between what's right and what's wrong, what's abuse and what's not.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe we should talk a little bit about what is the definition of abuse, especially when it refers to children.
Mm.
I mean,
Well,
my experience is just from, and then I'm happy to hear yours, is, my mother abused me physically,
mm-hmm.
emotionally,
Yeah.
and I wasn't abused sexually as a child, but I was abused physically. I mean, my mother hit me usually every day,
Yeah.
more than once. That was her style,
Mm.
and emotionally as well. And so I grew up and I became very, very rebellious.
Mm.
And I never did what she wanted. I did the opposite of what she wanted. So what did you experience?
Well, I was taken from a very loving background. So up to the age of 3.5, I'd lived with my mother. And then suddenly I was taken by my father and hoisted into this world of what I would call just torture and violence. And that went on for 14.5 years. And I don't go into it in detail in the book because I don't really believe that it's not a kiss and tell, and it's certainly not to go into all the graphics. But it was suffice to say that it was torture from an emotional and mental point of view, and it could go on for several hours. It could go on for 6 hours. And I used to beg to go to the physical stage because that was when I knew the relief was coming because she would wear out from hitting me. So the emotional and mental torture is actually far worse because that leaves the mental scars that then create negative programming for us as adults, which creates this cycle of deprivation. And that's what I'm trying to highlight because I help people to break that cycle so it doesn't pass on through the generations.
So are you saying that our minds get wired up in a certain way? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah, and we can't help it. We're loving. I mean, as children, we're just little loving beings, just learning to survive. We don't necessarily, intend to have a negative impact on our childhood. We just can't help it. The unconscious mind programs us with those negative patterns, and so we repeat it, and we then pass it on to our loved ones too.
Wow.
So it's not intentional, but it is like a disease, and that's why abuse is being looked at so seriously now here in the UK.
Very interesting. And, and so what's interesting too is that as we grow up, by becoming, teenagers and young adults, and then later on we get married, we continue these patterns, right?
Yes, yeah, we do. And I've seen it, and I've even seen it with families who have been separated. So children who've been separated from their parents and had no knowledge that their parents had a violent upbringing, they would then attract violent partners themselves purely because they were attached to their energy at some point. And so they learnt the unconscious behavior. Mm-hmm. So it's, it is that like a disease.
And what you're really saying then is, I just want to make sure the viewers really get this, is that we are helpless about this. We have no control over it, because what's in control of it is our subconscious mind, and it just tells everything, our entire being, what to do and what to think, moment to moment. Is that accurate?
Yes, I believe so. But I also feel that our education system doesn't help with our, the way our mind is wired. Our development of our brain doesn't work with the same pattern of our education input. So we stimulate one side of the brain and not the other. So our unconscious faculty, or our higher self, is not developed. So therefore we can't see it.
And our educational system, I don't know about the UK, but I know about the US. What you and I are talking about right now in the school system is not even recognized.
No, it's not. And I mean, if you bought a Ferrari, you wouldn't go and drive that if you just passed your driving test. You'd have to learn how to drive a supercar like that. So it's the same as the human mind. Why on earth are we given this mind and we don't, fully know how to use it from an early age? So this is the most important piece of kit that we're ever going to have in our life, and we don't even use, we only use a fraction of it.
Yes, that's accurate. Wow, fascinating stuff. So, so knowing now that a lot of us go through this kind of stuff, how do we break it? Like, do you feel that what ends up happening? I mean, for me, what happened is I created breakdowns in my life, and the breakdowns look like a divorce, getting deadly ill. So, I created these breakdowns where my attention is being brought to my real self, my higher self, and I ended up starting to pay attention that, wait a minute, there's more to this than what I've been doing. And that's how really I became aware that I became aware of that I am more than just what I've been doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're more open to this in the US. In the UK, people look at breakdowns as failure, and then they struggle with that, and so they keep on recreating these dramas because they don't get that they've actually asked for this, so they're trying to wake up to something to help them to see that there is an alternative. So I, like you, I had these breakdowns and these illnesses to help me to actually find the solutions. And it was through a severe illness I had, meningitis, that I actually found the solution, how to actually break these patterns. And that's what I deal with today. For the last 11 years, I've been helping people break these patterns.
Yeah, fantastic. And would you also say that, I mean, this is something like I learned for myself, and I'm just checking it out with you, that I always had the answers within myself. And for most of my life, I was looking for the answers out there somewhere, either in a book, either in a program, or joining different organizations about self-development. Not that I'm against, I'm very much for personal development, but I thought that the solutions to my problems and issues were out there somewhere, and there's some magical thing that I'm going to come across, like a shiny object that's going to solve my problem. And that shiny object doesn't really exist. No, it's in here. No. It's in our hearts.
Absolutely.
That's the shiny object.
Absolutely. And I think The Alchemist is the best book to actually highlight that, because we spend forever searching and going to all the workshops and reading all the latest material and trawling through the internet. And as you say, eventually when we actually dare to search inside ourselves, that's where we find the answers. That's where we get the true source of our inspiration and all our feedback, what we need.
Yeah. And I must say, Amanda, that is also part of our journey, because it's all taking us to go inside. Eventually, we have to face who we are. Isn't that just amazing? I think that's very exciting.
Oh, it is. I mean, but for me, though, it took me many years because I didn't like myself. I found it very scary to look at myself. And a lot of people do, especially when they've gone through abuse. So, but it doesn't have to be a scary process. It's not like counseling. And I think people mistake this. I think they think that when they start looking within themselves, it's all going to come up to the surface and they're going to be stuck with it and they don't know what to do with it. This is not like that at all. But this is where we find the true resolution, the true peace in ourselves.
Would you say it's because, and it's also fear-based, because people fear that if they really look inside and see who they are, because let's just call it what it is, and I'm again speaking for myself, until I became awake and conscious, I pretended. I was pretending to be somebody that I really was not, but I wanted to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
I think
most people, I believe, are pretending. And the best examples I have is for example, I learned just throughout this whole process, because I did very similar journeys than I believe you have. I studied things like people that go, guys that go to work out and they become really buff. They really have this core belief that they are weak, and they do everything in their power to prove to the world and to themselves that they are very strong. But underneath all of that facade, they still believe that they are weak. And same thing with pretty women. If you look at all the pretty magazines and all these beautiful, gorgeous women, you know, in my perception, they are gorgeous. I don't know about anybody else. And if you talk to them, you're going to find out that they don't feel that they are gorgeous or pretty. They actually think that they're ugly.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And I get a lot of my clients, ladies that come to see me who are beautiful, but they don't see that. Not until they've gone through the internal work. And once they find the beauty within themselves, that's when they really truly see their true spirit in there. And it shines through. People notice it. People notice authentic people, and that's really important. And I think, again, once we start to become authentic, we can only then be with authentic people. It's very hard for us to settle with people who are not their true selves, or not happy with themselves. So again, it's a sort of a default. You then attract the right people who come into your life to benefit you and the greater good of everyone around you. Yeah, so it is a process, isn't it?
That is true. I went through, like, as I went through this process, this journey, it's like my life almost occurred for me. Like, I went through and cleaned out my closet.
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people that I used to be with no longer fit into my world. And so I shed all that. You know, it's almost like, you know, what's the...
It's very
like an anaconda, you know, when the anaconda goes through shedding its skin.
Yes, yeah, very much so. And I think that that's necessary, because you're letting go of the outer. So, you know, and that's a reflection of you letting go of the inner stuff that you no longer need.
Yeah. That's
but
awesome.
again, but a lot of it's all you know, we've been brainwashed this through media, which is, you know, and people can work this out for themselves, but they fall asleep and they get affected by it.
So I'm wondering,
feel that immunity.
Yeah, I'm wondering, what are you finding in terms of the millennials? You know, people that are in their 30s, late 20s, 30s, where I'm noticing that they are relating to the world very differently than the way I do, or I have in the past. They they're not buying a lot of the stuff that I bought, hook, line, and sinker. It's all out there. All the things that are going on with politics, all the things that are going on with education. They don't seem to be buying the old way of how things were or how things are. They somehow figuring things out, I feel, much faster than I ever have. How do you feel about that?
I think that's because time has shifted, and we've come through this evolutionary period. We're in the age of Aquarius, so it's all about communication. And yes, technology has sped up, and we've moved on with that. But equally, I believe that as a human race, we are internally evolving. So our inner communication is being wired to help us to communicate on that higher level. So we're getting a lot of. I deal with the crystal, indigo, and rainbow children.
Oh wow!
And we've got
Amazing.
a lot of. Yeah, and I'm an indigo, so we're system busters, and that's what we're about. And it's making way for this.
Great word! I have not heard that before. System busters.
Yeah.
That's great.
We're not radical. I mean, we don't stand up on a soapbox, but we do it through love and grace. So it's a little bit different.
Fantastic.
So,
wow.
Yeah. But there is this new wave of people who are coming through now who are understanding, and it's also that there's this conscious collaboration that's going on in industry as well. People are now thinking this is the hip hop and the happening thing to be doing. It's now good to be conscious of your employees and your competitors, etc. So it's the way that social media starts to fire up and spread this, so that it becomes the next trend. So we're now moving into a more consciously aware environment, worldwide.
Yes, and it's beginning to take hold, I believe, in every area, including politics.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And corporations, which if I look back 20 years ago, corporate America was not interested in this stuff whatsoever. But now they are. Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of it, they're frightened of getting left behind, so they're doing it by default. But actually, because they've been brought into it, because of that, they're actually feeling that they're feeling better. Because they're feeling better, they're realizing that actually it's working. So either way, they're doing it.
So when you're referring to the guys upstairs, let's talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I grew up in a very down-to-earth family. And so they didn't talk about things like angels and, things that were fluffy and twinkly. And I'm a very grounded Capricorn. So I needed to call them something that I could relate to, like they're my friends, because that's what they were. They were like my friends when I was a child. They're still my friends now. And I talk to everybody on a very down-to-earth basis. So I always call them the guys upstairs. And that's how I've always explained them to all my class participants and my clients and my family and everybody, and it's just stuck. So inevitably, when I wrote the book, they asked me to name it after them, so I did in their honor.
So you're really talking about angels, and so you call them the guys upstairs.
And there's lots of them as well. So it's not Timmy and Matthew and Helen and Ruby. So it's just the guys upstairs. It's with angels, you don't have to have names. I mean, we have these names here on earth which limit us anyway, because we start to have a label. And as you rightly pointed out at the beginning of the show, who am I apart from being intuitive consultant? At the end of the day, we're just this human energy ball that's trying to do our very best. And so that's how I see them as well. So I just do a collaborative group of the guys upstairs.
So where does your intuitiveness come from? Have you always had it?
When I was a child, I had to spend a lot of time out in nature, but I was chucked out in the garden. That was my punishment. But for me, it was my solace. We had a huge menagerie of animals and plants, and it was wonderful. So for me, it was my playground. And I believe that I got a lot of my intuitive faculty opened because of the time I spent in nature. My father was also very intuitive. And his father was Norwegian, and his upbringing was to be very open. And so he was an entrepreneur, and he had an inquisitive mind. And because of that, I believe that a lot of what I picked up was from him.
Would you say he was also very curious, and so are you?
Yes, yeah, very much so. So that's where I got it from. But I also believe that the healing side comes from my grandmother, from my mother's side. But with him, I was very intrigued by the world. And also I tested myself as a child. I used to do silly things like I wouldn't want to wake the family up with my alarm clock because I used to have to get up for the animals. So I would wake up at 6:59 every single morning to turn the alarm off before it went off at 7 o'clock. So I used to be able to program myself.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and think, you know, things like understanding when animals were sick and what to do with them. So I realized at a young age that this was there, but I felt very awkward because other children didn't display that. So I didn't talk about it.
Got it. So when, how do you actually, can you give us just a little view into how do you work with people in terms of the healing work? You do energy healing?
Yeah. So that's very unique. And so I've been in this business for 20 years. I don't like to call it a business, but you have to label it with something. So I've been a consultant for 20 years, but 11 years ago I had meningitis and it was very severe, and I was in hospital, and I was in the A&E unit, the accident and emergency, and I was in and out of consciousness, and I heard one of the doctors say, she's only got an hour, you better get her husband in. And my hands were on my stomach, and I had all these needles in my hands because I had these antibiotics being pumped into me. And my first thought was, I'm not leaving 2 children under the age of 4 without a mother. And so I prayed and I said, look, okay, I know I've been dabbling with this for some time, but I really need a miracle now. Can you please pull out all the stops, guys? And they said, right, if you seriously want to understand how to remove these programs, because I was, even though I've been very aware and working in the spirit, you know, my body spirit industry for some time, I still didn't know how to remove some of the programs I was still suffering. And that's when I learned in the hospital, in that agony, how to overcome it. And I came out in 8 days. I had 5 specialists. They all said to me I would have brain damage. I wasn't supposed to live anyway. I was supposed to have amputations, blood disorders, organ failure, all sorts of things like that. They couldn't understand how I came out. And then they sent the students around to look at me. And when I came out, I vowed that within 6 months I would be helping other people. And that started. And people were intrigued with me at first. And I to be fair, I was very cautious about using it. So what I started doing was just testing it out. But people kept sending more and more people to me because it was recommended. And I never looked back. It just, I've worked with people who are as young as 7 up to the age of 92. So it's the same formula that I use with everybody.
And what are you doing? Are you moving energy? Are you?
Yeah. Okay. So what happens is that when the client first comes to see me, we go through like an intuitive analysis. Okay. So sometimes people think that they know why they're coming to see me, what the problem is. Sometimes they're aware of it, sometimes they're not, and there's other reasons, other factors, and that will come up in the session. So I say it's like the equivalent of releasing the champagne cork, so we need the bubbles to come to the surface, we need the negative programs to come to the surface. Then the second part of the session, I actually use the energy field, and I work over their energy field to let those programs come out. So it's like people would use with Reiki, but they go to the alpha level. This is using this going down to the energy level, which is the theta level, which is the frequency of the mind, where we open the door, which is where the negative programs are, and that releases them. But we do that over 3 sessions over a period of a month, because it takes about 30 days to create a program, and then it takes 30 days for us to uncreate it, to bring in the new programs, which are actually on our blueprint. So what we do is, because you can't have nothing, energy works that you always have to have something there. When you remove something negative, every cell in our body is programmed to become its best self. So therefore it's looking for its best self. And I open the blueprint and it takes the programs from the blueprint. So we start to program ourselves with our best health and our best relationships. And so we become aligned. So it's the quickest way I can get people to turn this around so they can do this and make this change for the rest of their life.
So, and in effect, what you're doing is you're helping them reprogram their mind.
Yeah, and actually, it's their mind that does it. This is the most amazing thing. their mind, they have this onboard hospital unit that knows exactly what to do for themselves. All I am is a conduit. I know how to open the door, and I know how to allow that energy to move through. And I'm simply there as a, as a bystander.
Very cool.
Something. Yeah.
So if you could describe like maybe how this looks like in the mind, it's all these neural pathways that have these certain connections, right?
Yeah.
And you basically almost like, the best word I can come up with right now is you do like a cleansing.
It is like a cleansing, but what we've also got to do is, we talked about negativity and positivity, fear and love. We also have to befriend it, because I remember looking into this when I was looking at serious conditions and why people attract cancer and have all these major conditions, and they suffer for years and years with these chronic illnesses. And we learn to be fearful of these things because that's the way our society is. And also going into hospitals, it's very fear-based, and when we see the consultants, it's very fear-based. So we can't help but be very fearful of this. What I'm doing is I'm actually showing love to these negative programs that are actually in the energy field, and asking them permission to move, because the body knows what is best for it. So we're doing a bit of a compromise. And so we have to trust that person is actually going to go through the process. More often than not, they do. We never have anyone. It's only about 3% of people actually say, do you know what, this isn't for me, and that's because they're not ready for it, or they've been coerced by somebody else to come along because they feel it's the best thing for them. They really have to be ready for this. And most people that come to me, usually I'm the last port of call. They've gone through so many different orthodox treatments or spiritual, treatments that haven't worked. They decide that they're going to try it out.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in essence, what you're also doing is to help them find their own power.
Yes.
And do you
absolutely.
feel that that's related also to, is there a connection between cleaning up the mind and rewiring it to figuring out who they really are and what their real passion is in life? Why did they really come here?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the crux of it. With all of this, they don't expect that. That's sort of like the precursor, really. That's exactly what they're there for. It's the symptoms that have actually brought them there in the first place, maybe the illness or the divorce or whatever it is. So when they become more aligned, because we've cleansed and we've got rid of the negative programming, they suddenly find what it is that makes them feel passionate about life, what their purpose is, who they want to be with, their best health, and all of these things. So it just naturally happens.
All of a sudden, they get clarity, right?
Absolutely. It's like a light bulb moment.
Before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. I help people to find their power and their voice, and that's what this process does.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel I have it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about because this network is all about evolution. I looked at your website. I always look at every one of my guests' website, and I found this term. You called it soul evolution, and I love it. Let's talk about soul evolution. What do you mean by it?
I think it's the layers that we go through, those processes that help us to go through the multiple layers of starting to find who we really are. And I don't think you can fast track this. I don't think you can. You spend your whole life going through this process, and most people are conditioned to think that we need to get to the end of the journey, and that's what we're taught to.
But there is no end of the journey. It's the process.
No,
it's the process. And that's the life. That's the juice.
Exactly. And it's when you feel as if you're waking up every day and it's Christmas morning, that's when you know you're actually going through that soul evolution, because your life is rich in all ways. And it's not about money. It's about people and moments and sunsets and time and peace. And it's, having that security and safety. So there's many, many aspects to it, but you get all that when you go through that soul evolution process, when you're on your path, you know?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it just gets better and better, doesn't it? I mean, it's
Oh,
just
absolutely.
another layer after another layer. And
Yeah.
you said it. You said it so perfectly. Like, there is no place to really get to. This is about the experience that we're having moment to moment. That's what life is about.
Absolutely.
Right?
And this is it. I think everyone's striving to get somewhere so fast that they're never in the moment. And because of that, they are completely disconnected from the reality of who they really are. And I see that so much. And it's, you know, this is why we're doing this campaign to get out there and show people, actually, there's, you know, you're already there, but you don't see it because you're looking at a different canvas.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you know, they want to get to wherever they're going in a, you know, in a Jaguar or a Porsche or whatever, but or a BMW. You know, I used to be a BMW fan, but it's not about that. It doesn't matter what car you're in.
No.
It's about, it's like, I wake up in the morning and I'm having this experience more and more that I am not afraid about anything anymore. It's like, bring it on. Whatever is going to happen today, it's going to be fantastic. And even when something happens that's not fantastic, I'll just go, oh, okay. Well, that's not that so fantastic, but guess what? I'm experiencing it and I'm not going to resist it. It is what it is. This is happening, and I'll just move through it as quickly as I can.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the lovely thing about it, because people feel that when they're trying to fix themselves or they're trying to better their lives, that they're trying to find perfection. They're trying to find the solutions to everything. And we're not very comfortable being uncomfortable. And I always teach people, actually, once you become comfortable with the uncomfortable, it no longer becomes uncomfortable.
Oh, how perfect. Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, that is like perfect. Oh my God. It's like what I get a great kick out of is when I'm in a conversation, or I'm doing some corporate consulting or whatever, and all of a sudden the air gets really thick and people, you know, there's the elephant, but nobody wants to recognize publicly that the elephant is in the room. And I love those moments because that's where the breakthrough is. And I go,
absolutely.
Hey, does everybody see the elephant? I see it. Am I crazy? Yeah. And then I'll just dive into it. And people are really afraid. They don't want to go there. But it's I thrive on that. I love it. And it could be in one-on-one. It could be in a group. It doesn't matter. It's fantastic because that's where the growth is.
Do you know what? You hit the nail on the head. That's where I get the biggest buzz. As soon as I find that difficulty and I think, oh, hang on a minute, oh, I see it, and then that's it. There's a light bulb moment because you see the solution. And that's what I was looking at when I was watching my parents. My father was an entrepreneur, and I was fascinated with the entrepreneur mind, because I thought, well, how come you always attract everything you want? And that's because they always saw the solutions in everything, the difficulty and the good stuff as well. And I think that's what made me realize that actually you can do anything with your mind if you really, really try. So it's a fascinating process when you actually have that ability to see it at every level. And that's what it's about. This is what alignment's about. You're able to see all the levels so you can see the whole picture. And that's the only way you can really, truly make good decisions.
So I've been saying this on the network for quite some time. I want to run this by you and see how it grabs you. The mind is a fantastic thing to waste, or it will waste you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It will. It does. It absolutely does, because we're walking around with this 10-pound bowling ball on our neck, and we just look at it and we put makeup on it in the morning, and we go to work and we don't realize the damage we're doing with the thoughts that are going out. I mean, we think about 64,000 thoughts a day. And if all of that's habitual rubbish, all we're doing is recreating that again and again and again. So you know, we never look on the inside. We always just look on the outside and make sure we got the best makeup and the best hairstyles, etc. And we forget about what's actually really going on, how we're creating our world through this mindset. So, yeah, I like that one.
It's very rich.
Yeah.
It's extremely rich. So so it's like I just want to call this to everybody's attention that's watching or going to be watching later in the show. The best place to kind of recognize this is really, for me, to have a display of this. What we're talking about is in corporate America, because you can go into work every morning and watch how everything gets to be played almost exactly the same way every day.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody will do the same thing. They will go get coffee at the same place, same time. They will go to lunch. Everything just gets repeated over and over, including the issues that they talk about gets to be repeated over and over and over again.
Yeah, and that starts from school. We go to school, we have the school routine, we have playtime, we have whatever lessons we have, we see whatever teachers. So we learn to be moving in that formation all the time, and we become very systematic. Whereas when we worked, you know, before in communities, we all had different roles to play depending on nature and what was going on with the weather and who was sick and who needed help, and we just all integrated as a team. And I think that this is what this conscious collaboration is about. It's about seeing how we work as a team, and you know, helping those that are not doing so well, and not looking at the ones who are the best as the iconic figures anymore. We're looking at everybody as equal, and you know, it's starting to come out of our comfort zones, because that's what we need to do. We need to keep on breaking those parameters of who we are. So doing, you know, something every single day that helps us to go through, you know, our comfort zone, and things like that are what the human condition is all about. That's the only way you're really truly living. Because what I say is that you know, some people that go to work and they come home and they watch the soaps in the evenings, you know, they think they're documentaries. You know, on some level they get so embroiled in it all, and that they're shallow breathing, they're hardly existing. And those that go through emotional stuff where they've been tested by life and they've found themselves and they've become aligned, they're really fully living and breathing from the bottom of their lungs. You know, they're taking all of life in. So, you know, we have choice of what we want to do in this earth.
Well, you said it really well, and the choice is really, we can be, if I use a metaphor of a football game, you can be sitting in the seats watching the game, or you can go down and be one of the players. Which one is more fun?
Well, I'm rubbish at football, so I'd probably have to sit that one out.
I don't really like football that much, but I love soccer, so I could use the soccer scenario the same way. If I had to make that choice, I better go play the soccer than.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
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 It's much more fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think, to be fair, you know, a lot of people don't realize they have that option because they are what I call asleep. They don't see that there is other choices. I think only when experiences happen to them and give them a bit of a tap on the back, that's when they have that sort of first, you know, initial thought of actually finding some other solution, some other way of being. So some people just don't get that opportunity.
And what can we do, or how can we make sure that, you know, everybody on the planet has an exposure to what you and I have been talking about so far? I mean, I'm doing my part by doing these shows, and you doing your part by doing what you're doing. But is there, and for a long time, I'm feeling now that that there's some kind of a conscious movement that's going on, and we're all part of it, and it's spreading. And at some point, I feel it will get to a level where, like, the best way I could describe this is, you know, when you go up to the top of the mountain and you make a snowball and you let it go from the mountain and it starts building and the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets so big that you can't stop it anymore.
Exactly.
You know, one of those things. So I go ahead.
No. You're spot on, and I think it's this is what's happening, and this is what this Aquarian age is all about. It's about the the age of technology that's improved so dramatically that actually, with our spiritual evolution as well, the two of them are actually going to marry and merge. And this is what's happening now. I'm seeing that through social media, there are far more groups that are connecting worldwide now than there was, you know, sort of a year ago, 2 years ago, even 3 years ago. So it's rapidly improving. And that is connecting all these, what I call little pods. So you've got, you know, you've got 7 billion people on the planet. And I'm involved in a project called the Beautiful Minds Inspires Others. It's on Facebook. And this came to me in February of this year. And it's to connect 100 million people on Earth. So if we connect over 100 million people, that's over 1% of the world's population. If you do that, and they are all consciously thinking the same thing, it's enough to actually create the ripple that's necessary to help the rest of the 7 billion. It's based on this research that was done in America when they were looking at certain communities where they had very little crime rate, and they realized that in those communities there was transcendental meditation groups going on there. And because of that, they were sending out this message of peace. So it only takes a certain amount to send out into a community that you can start then creating a different environment. And so we're doing this project, which is going to work with 1% of the world's population. So we're working on that now.
Oh, very awesome. I heard something similar. I don't know if you heard the story about the 100 monkeys.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Yeah.
Very similar, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's the same principle.
Yeah, and once the 100 monkey has done the same thing, the 101 monkey doesn't even have to be near. It could be on another completely different geographical area, and we'll start doing the same thing. So that's what, you know, it's energy based, basically, is what.
Of course it is. Yeah. And this is, you know, we can use energy in a good way, in a positive way, and a negative way. At the moment, you know, we're a lot of people are very consciously sending out a lot of positive energy, which is creating mass change, and we are seeing that, especially in places like, you know, and in our country, in politics, in the police system, in corporations, in business. We're seeing the way people are starting to be mindful of the way they act and think and feel, so that they are aware of, because they're aware of how it's actually affecting others. So it is something that's actually more mainstream. It's not just a spiritual thing. People are starting to just want to have a better life, and they've decided to actually try this different option. As simple as that. So I think it's, you know, it's not just about you know, little pods. I think it's a worldwide thing. Everybody's waking up to this now.
That's singing to my ears. So I want to have you have this opportunity to share with the viewers, if they want to work with you or become part of the project that you're working on. How would they contact you? Just share something about what your preference is, how they contact you, go to your Facebook, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, we've got a couple of options. They can contact us through the Soul Searching Center website. So it's www.thesoulsearchingcenter.com. We've got an email address. They can contact us and find out how they can actually do something to make a difference. If they're on Facebook, they can go on the Beautiful Minds Inspires Others page. And if they click like, we're going to start building that. And when we move on from that, because obviously Facebook only do 5,000 max. So social media is growing and it's developing all the time. So we will actually be able to get 100 million people connected. So that's the starting point anyway. So yeah, they can contact me through both means.
That's very awesome.
Excellent.
All right. So the other thing that I'm really curious about is, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but a lot of us seems to be, and this certainly has been true for me, is I needed to go down in the mud as deeply as I could first before I could climb out and become the magnificent human being that I feel I am becoming, and I'm changing every day. But it took me almost taking myself out of the game to get here. And I'm just curious, really curious about, there's got to be other alternatives. I don't feel that people have to, like you and I think, done it the hard way.
Yeah.
There has to be an easier way than the way you and I have done it. Not that the way we've done it is wrong, or I'm not judging it. It is what it is. But there has to be in the future easier ways for us to I think become awake and go through our own evolution than the way you and I have done it, and millions of people have done it the way you and I have done it. But I think it's almost like I want to say this is more. Is there a new school that's coming?
Yes. I mean, I think that we're the first wave. That, you know, it sort of started in the 60s where we really started to open up and explore it through spirituality. But it was sort of a bit roughshod, and it was very sort of scattered and it was very experimental for a lot of people, and it still is. But because of this technology, because also the demands, because of the negativity that's going on in the world, the need now is to find more peace and control in society. And the only way you can do that is to actually strip it right back and go to the grassroots level, and it's about education. So if you start to teach children from a young age to be mindful of others, to be in alignment, if you do that, what's happening is everybody then starts to get connected to their own little path, which is part of the bigger picture, so that we're all aligned. So eventually we all work more coherently together. And then we start to rule out crime and bullying and abuse and terrorism and all of these things, because rather than us focusing on all the things that are negative and hurting us, we do too much of that. What we need to do is start looking at solutions at a very early stage, which is now, to build new generations to come, so that we start to eventually rid this altogether. And it is possible.
Yeah. I believe it's possible too.
Yeah.
So I mean that makes sense. What you're saying then is what I'm hearing there is the millennials are really the first wave of this. I don't have a better word than kind of a evolution revolution.
Yeah.
is that they teaching their kids differently than the way I have and we have, and they bringing more love. They're not buying into the old way of doing things. So it's becoming a cultural change, and it has to occur. There's no way that we can go back to the way things were, because the millennials, and you mentioned also technology, it's been a huge shift. Technology has brought us so close. I mean, I can look at this. I can do this show with you in the UK, and it didn't really take that much. I just got on my computer. We did a quick test, and here we are. When I was in my 20s, there's no way I could have done this. I couldn't even call you on the phone.
Absolutely. And this is the reason why this is going to shift. So you can imagine in the next 20 years where we'll be then, especially with this new wave of these, these children and these adults that are coming through. So I'm seeing it all the time. I get a lot of mums and dads that bring their children to me. So I see these youngsters that come along because they are still subjected to a lot of sensitivity, because there's all these children with all these learning difficulties. They're not learning difficulties. They're limitations, so that they don't choose the wrong path. So it narrows their chances, so they go down the right path. Whereas we've been given too much as a society, and because we've got too much choice, it's bamboozled us, and we can't deal with it. So we can't make those right choices. When you're aligned, you don't have any problem. You always make that right choice. So it is about understanding that once we start to, we can shift, the adults as well. We don't have to just start this in the education system. By speaking about this, going out there and teaching this, it's very simple techniques that will actually help you to open the mind. I mean, I was taught the class that I teach by Deborah Borgen, who was Norway's top psychic, and she came over and mediated on a program that I was on in the UK here. And she came over 2 years later and she said, "You're ready to teach this in the UK?" And I said, "Yeah, but the UK isn't ready for me to teach it to them." And she said, "But they got to understand this." And I said, "Deborah, my father was Norwegian. I understand you. I understand what you're teaching me. I get it, but they're not ready. Now that was 4 years ago, 4 years ago, and now they are ready. So this has shifted quite dramatically.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. So there are people now who are ready for this. So, and in 10 years, this is going to be mainstream. So it's, as I say, we just need to, go down each step as we're getting the information.
So I just wanted to share an example from my own life regarding one of my granddaughters. So,
Yeah.
and this is coming from that same energy that you're speaking about, which is I'm paying a lot more attention to recognizing in my grandkids what they're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my granddaughter was 4 years old, it was so apparent to me that she absolutely loved dancing. Like that's all she wanted to do is dance and express herself. There was this like incredible energy that she has, and she comes to life, and all I'm experiencing in her presence is love and joy when she does it. And so guess what I did? I talked to her mother, my daughter, and I said, I got to sign her up. I got to sign her up to go dancing, because I don't really care about what they're teaching her in the school. Like I know they're going to teach her words and numbers and all this other stuff. And you know what? I don't really care about that. I care about this. Yeah. I care about that energy that she has and that love she has for dancing, because that is who she is and that is what she wants to do. So I'm just supporting that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and do you know what? This is exactly what I do. I had a young boy that was brought to me. He was 8 years old, and his mum, she was in bits because she said he couldn't go to school because he went along to a trial, and it was a Premier football team scout that went along, and he said, "Oh, you're no good at skills." I don't know what that is, but he said, "You're no good at skills. You'll never amount to anything." And that boy was a fantastic footballer, and he was so ill he couldn't go to school. So I worked with him. I did 3 sessions like I do with everybody else, did that for a month. Today he's got a scholarship. He's top of his, he plays for Watford, and he's got choices either going to come over to America and do a 4-year scholarship, soccer scholarship, or he's going to pay for a Premier football team here. Now, if he'd missed that chance, if he had listened to that man, he would have missed his genius potential. So I believe there's about 8 different genius potentials which we all have. So in individual forms, so we could have 1 or 2 of them. And if they're athletic, then why put them in with 30 other kids in a classroom and teach them all maths and expect them to all get to the same level? Yeah. If they have these special skills, they should go to classes that teach them to how to hone in on these skills, so they then go down that particular route, which is their genius potential. And that's what our education system should incorporate.
I totally agree with you. Our educational system should be able to tune into what makes these kids' heart sing.
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
And it isn't that difficult.
No, it's not. It's not rocket science. It's simple. Yeah. It really is. You just nurture what they love. And that's as simple as that.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't let the show complete with more important and powerful words than what you just said.
Bless you.
Yeah, you've been fantastic, and I think I'm going to let you get some sleep now.
Thank you.
Because our conscious hour has just flown by. So I'm sure that you don't have an experience of this as a whole hour, because I certainly don't. It feels like you and I just talked for about 5 minutes. But you've been absolutely fantastic. Your work in the world is absolutely outrageous. I love what you do. Thank you very much for being who you are in the world. And thank you for being on the network. And I wish you an awesome good night. And for everybody else out there, if you felt that Amanda did anything or said anything, and she did several things for me that touched, moved, and inspired me. But if it inspired you, then please continue to come to the network. Keep watching this show on YouTube and many others, because the more you watch them, the more possibility that they have that each month they'll get to the top 10 to our Catch Television Media top 10 list, and then they can go to public television. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you on the network next time. Thank you, and have a good night.